Perfect. Thank you very much. Good morning. I will now call this meeting of the Standing Committee on Social Development to order. My name is Caitlin Cleveland, and I am the MLA for Cam Lake and the chair of this committee. The NWT Legislative Assembly's Standing Committee on Social Development is made up of regular members who can look deeper into social issues affecting NWT residents. Committee has identified one of its priorities as exploring ways of increasing and improving housing stock, as well as access to housing according to the needs of small communities, of regional centres, and of Yellowknife. Committee is currently meeting with community stakeholders to focus on the challenges and barriers faced by NWT residents in regards to home ownership and private market rent. Committee will provide recommendations to the Government of the Northwest Territories related to changes or improvements to programs and services that support both home ownership and private market rentals in the Northwest Territories. Our first order of business is to open our meeting with a prayer, and I will ask MLA Bonnet Rouge to offer the prayer for us this morning.
Merci, Madam Chair, committee members, and guests. There seems to be lots of animosity related to COVID-19, the attitudes, uncertainty with outlook for the pandemic. Perhaps a little prayer will provide some comfort to the residents of the Northwest Territories. The short prayer for healing. Lord of Heaven, we rest underneath your mighty wings of love. We dwell within your gentle heart. We know there is healing in your touch. Through the sufferings of Christ, we can ask for restoration and trust in your goodness. You are my Lord, my Savior, my healer, and my friend. We dwell within your gentle embrace. Amen.
Thank you very much, MLA Bonnet Rouge. Our next item is to review and adopt the agenda. Mr. Burla.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This morning we have a public presentation in relation to the housing review from Summit Roofing Ltd. And that is all that's on the agenda this morning. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Burla. Are there any additions or amendments to today's agenda that members would like to see? Seeing and hearing none, can I have a motion to approve the agenda as is? MLA Knockleby. MLA Knockleby has adopted the agenda as is. Having reviewed and adopted the agenda, are there any conflicts of interest today? Seeing and hearing none. Today, committee will hear from Ms. Aya Bershan, Project Manager and Safety Officer for Summit Roofing Ltd. Here in Yellowknife. Today's meeting is being live streamed on the Assembly's social media channels, and presentation materials will be available on the Legislative Assembly's website and social media after the meeting has concluded today. To respect physical distancing requirements, all witnesses will be attending via video conference. We also have 2 members also joining us virtually today as well. I would like to remind all members and witnesses that all comments, questions, and remarks will need to be directed to myself as chair, and both members and witnesses will need to wait to be recognized by the chair before speaking. I will now ask members to introduce themselves for the record, starting to my left with MLA Knockleby.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Katrina Knockleby, MLA for Great Slave.
Rocky Simpson, Hay River South.
Kevin O'Reilly, Frame Lake.
Thank you very much, MLA O'Reilly, and now I will turn it over to the phone line, starting with MLA Bonnet Rouge. MLA Bonnet Rouge, I believe you're muted.
Ron Bonnet Rouge, MLA Decho.
For Yellowknife North.
Thank you very much, Mr. Johnson. So, good morning, Aya. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. We're really excited to have you here today, and we thank you for making this time for us. So I'm wondering if you can start off with an introduction of yourself and then proceed with your presentation. Thank you very much.
Okay. I believe we might as well go to the second slide because it has a little blurb to introduce us and myself. So I'm one of the owners of Summit Roofing, and we've been in business since 2019. My partner has been a roofer since 2014. He's currently a Red Seal roofer, and he's worked all over the Northwest Territories in different communities. We are both self-employed. We have 5 full-time employees, and we are roofing specialists. In the past, we've had more than 15 other employees that we've rotated through, and there's a high turnover. And of the people that we have employed and are currently hiring, 80% of those are Indigenous and Aboriginal. My personal experience, currently I'm doing the project management for Summit Roofing. However, in the past, I've also worked for housing as program officer. Just a short explanation of what that was. And it was for Yellowknife Housing Authority. And as a program officer, as soon as people got into housing, any issues that they might have had with their housing, with their rent, complaints, with the implementation of the program, I dealt with that. So this presentation is taken from an employer's perspective with the background history of social housing. So we can move on to the second slide. Okay, so currently the employees that we have, we pay them a livable wage. I believe in the Northwest Territories currently based on, I believe it's Living Alternatives North, it's more than $23 and a couple of cents. We pay them more than $25, and that is to encourage to have them to elevate the possibility to elevate their living standards to and improve their living situation. And I think we've also found for ourselves when we first started here in Yellowknife that living on less than that and then being expected to provide for a family and to own a home is virtually impossible. So our human resource vision is to give our employees a livable wage. And one of the other things that we strongly encourage and will advocate for for our employees is further education and growth. And we'd like to lead by example. I think that was more of leading by example is more of we almost like rolled into it as accidental. And but we've noticed that it has a very big impact on our employees, and I'll go into that a little further. Next slide, please. Okay, so like I mentioned before, we try to provide them. No, we don't try. We actually provide them with a livable wage, and so on this slide, it talks about social housing. So one of the things when I was doing this presentation that I actually realized is that when I was working for social housing, which was until last year, what we did was people would come in, there's an application process, there's a point system, and then they would be put on the wait list until inventory freed up. And based on the information they provided and the main, I think, at least in Yellowknife, 99% of the people's rent was set using their past CRA filings. One of the things that I've noticed is that when people come into social housing, their debt and income situation has already been established. So when people sign up, they either already have car payments, they have a phone, they have, credit cards, they have all this debt that they take care of in one way or another has already it's been established, and their income has also been set, whether they're working or whether it's income assistance or whether it's child tax or other benefits. That's fixed. As soon as they get into housing, let's say they get a job. As soon as they get a job, they don't need to provide Yellowknife Housing with the fact that they got a job, because Yellowknife Housing will catch that income in the next year in June when they do a rent reassessment. Based on last year's income, your rent can go up. In that meantime, when you had a job, when you have a certain amount of income, and your rent, let's say when you got into housing, the base rent for housing is $80. If you have below a certain threshold, like if your income is within a certain range, the lowest range at least in Yellowknife, is $80, and the highest is $16.10. Let's say you go from $80 and then you have a great paying job, or at least you earn $25 an hour. Let's say $25 an hour is a livable wage. That's what we at least provide to our employees as the base. As soon as June hits, your rent increases to $610. In that meantime, when your rent was $80 or maybe even $160, or $320, that's a lot less than $610. You've already budgeted that money away, or you've spent it in a different way, because the subsidized rent, and you start working, that frees up a lot of disposable income. You might have already spent it, or you might have already allocated, maybe either to a new vehicle, maybe you've upgraded in something else, maybe it's been spent in other ways. But as soon as June hits, there has been no budgeting. You have debt. You have debt because you don't know how you're going to pay this rent. I remember when I was working in housing, I've had people come in and their rent was maybe $160, and they cannot afford either the rent increase or the rent itself. And one of the things that they tell me is, and I've heard this, it's like red thread through why people can't pay their rent, is car payments. They say that car payments come first, and because otherwise their car will get repossessed, and they're going to be staying in social housing anyways. We have a very low eviction rate. I'm not saying that people that have arrears should get evicted. I keep saying we, but I remember counseling people through their debt, referring them to ICM, Integrated Case Management, the HAF, the Homelessness Assistance Fund. And however, none of that elevated or changed their situation, because their skill set had not changed. Their skill set to be able to spend their money differently had not changed. So I find it an unrealistic situation to think that just because someone has a higher income, more money, that means they are able either to get out of social housing, or all of a sudden they start improving and doing better in life. It doesn't, more money does not equate a better set of life skills. That needs to be acquired in a different way. So just because and the problem isn't, of course, providing employees with a livable wage. No, everyone needs to have a livable wage. What's, working, otherwise what's the point of working? You might as well, it's not. There is, of course, social and mental benefits, of course, for working. However, just because you're getting more money does not mean you're going to live any better if your situation and your skill set doesn't change. So that's the example that I'm giving on the slides. The rent increase due to employment, they get an increase of employment. So they go from $80 per month to $610, and that's based on not even $25. That's based on $24 an hour, and for a 40-hour week. And this is taken, if you look at the rent scale from the Northwest Territories Housing Corporation, they would fall into that $610. There's no support in the meantime to provide them with a transition to that situation where actually they should have budgeted for the rent increase that is coming. Let me see. In the past, so I worked for Yellowknife Housing for 4 years, and we have lots of past tenant applications and files, and I was doing some research on a file, and I found that one of the files had a credit check. And we don't do credit checks. Since I was there hasn't been a credit check done. And I I don't know exactly what the philosophy behind the credit check is. However, I mean, I don't think it was to qualify to get into housing because, I don't think that should be a qualification. What it did provide is a glance into that applicant's debt income situation. So, for example, with a credit check, you can see the credit cards, you can see like if there's been a mortgage application, you can see, you can glean lots of information of where that person's money has been coming from or going to. And I believe one of the situations, like one of the things that you can't have when you're in housing is, of course, own property. And so one of the things that credit check also prevented in the past that we don't do anymore is to see if anyone actually has a mortgage or has applied for a mortgage, and we've had in the past someone that actually did have a house and, you shouldn't be qualifying for public housing at the time. And that would have been caught in that credit check. It only got retroactively caught. And unfortunately, that person had a house down south and they, as soon as they were able to sell the house down south while they were in public housing and move into another place over here, that was the only person that I have seen move from social housing into home ownership in Yellowknife. However, that person was already owning a house and should never have qualified for public housing. Were there for 4 years. I guess they were able to save even more money, and then they moved on to a house. So, credit checks would catch those things, but a credit check would also provide a abstract, objective approach to counseling. Maybe they would be able to provide the so the person that does the application is the tenant relations officer. They would provide the tenant relations officer with information to be able to guide this person into either budgeting for certain things or maybe debt consolidation, depending on the debt that they had. This is like really in detail, but this is, these are the things that I feel like need to happen. People need to be able to get counseled on their financial situation and maybe just even see their financial situation. I've had people that apply for the Homelessness Assistance Fund, which is a one-time $3,000 grant to get out of debt. To like, for example, if someone is what you have is they're drowning in a rent debt because they had an unforeseeable circumstance or they didn't budget or for whatever reason, that $3,000 can get them out of that hole. However, what is the plan after that? And so with that application, it asks, what is your income? What are your liabilities? Like, where is your debt? Where do you have car payments? Do you have credit card payments? Do you have student loan? And I've helped people fill those in. And some people look at that sheet and then they're like, that's the first time they actually see where the problems are, where the issues are. If I think more of that needs to happen, like an honest look at someone's financial situation. Those people do not want to be in that situation, but life can be overwhelming, and just being assisted in an application where those things need to be looked at is eye-opening. However, we shouldn't get to the situation where people are applying for half and only then do they realize where all their money is going to. So maybe there needs to be some kind of evaluation as soon as they get into with their application. From this is what we've seen. Maybe try to do this or that or some kind of counseling, and then sometimes it takes 4 years or even longer for people to actually get into housing. So as soon as they get into housing and they've set themselves up, maybe it's time for the program officer or some other completely new position to reassess their financial situation and to help them move on to a better financial position. Without that perspective, it is unrealistic to think that that social housing or public housing is transitional. Without that financial planning, without acquiring that kind of skill set, how are we going to expect people that at the lowest of their income had to pay $80 month rent per month to $16.10, which is the maximum, and I don't know about anyone else, but I don't think being able to find, especially maybe in small communities, a mortgage that low is even possible. But besides that, people that earn more money need to acquire more financial skills to be able to plan and get out of housing. If there is no change in those skills, then don't be surprised that people don't move out of housing, because they can't. Okay, next slide. Okay, so this is, I think, what I've talked about. The increase, there's a cost increase with the wage increase. So I'm not sure about other programs that get their money from the NWTHC, the Housing Corporation. I know that Young Life Housing, before I started, what they did was they evaluated the rent based on a month-to-month basis. And then they changed to a tax return basis. So you're always paying based on the rent of the income that you made last year. Of course, there is a chance to get your rent reassessed as soon as your employment changes. So, for example, let's say you already had your you worked for us, and unfortunately, in the winter we have no work, and your income isn't as high. You can go to Young Life Housing and get your rent reassessed based on your ROE and all the other income that you might have. So, however, when you keep working, your wages increase, but so does your rent, and so do other costs. And there is also that debt accumulation, because just because you have more money doesn't mean you're going to save it. Usually more money means spending more money if before that's exactly what you did and you didn't acquire new financial skills. And that's what I think I'm trying to make clear also over here on the slide. Livable wage does not guarantee a stable financial income. This in no way does not mean that we should not have people on a livable wage. That's not the point I'm trying to make. I'm trying to make the point that there needs to be a financial education. What I don't understand is why people are not teaching this at school. School should be a place where children are learning how to deal with money. And I'm not talking about the economics that people are getting at school, like the macroeconomics, how the supply chain works, this high theory that you really, it takes so much energy to apply to your real life. I didn't even take economics in high school, and I don't feel like I missed anything, but what I do feel like I missed out on is how to budget, and what are the benefits of saving, that there's a cost to debt, there's a cost to borrowing money. And so that needs to be not just taught at school, but also maybe people that are going to EC&E for an apprenticeship, or, it's the program that EC&E needs to provide, how to budget, or even housing needs to provide. And it shouldn't be one of those pamphlets, or come here, sit and watch a video. It needs to be, I think, more interactive. We need to look at the audience that we have. Who lives in the Northwest Territories and who was affected by social housing? From the numbers that we've seen in the past, 61% graduate high school, which means that 39 doesn't. That 39% don't graduate high school for lots of different socioeconomic reasons, their background, the homes that they come from. And not only do some of these people not graduate, like we have a large population that has not graduated high school, we also have a very large population that become parents at a very young age. That means that the people that have not graduated high school and these young parents, even though they might still be children, have to act as adults very quickly. If they're not getting these skills at school and they're not getting them anywhere else, how can we expect them to do any better? There's nothing changing in their situation. Throwing more money at it is not going to change their situation either. So resources need to be made available to people that have become adults at a very young age, and to adults to be able to elevate their situation financially and socially through the acquisition of skills. And financial education is a big part of that. If we don't do this, how can the goal of social or public housing, like I mentioned before, ever become home ownership? We're not changing anything in their situation. Just because they have employment and their rent increases doesn't make the situation any better for them to actually move on to home ownership. Next slide, please. So we encourage further education, and my partner has already done his Red Seal. I'm currently a level 1. I've done my level 1. I've done my level 2 of roofing, and we have another employee that is an apprentice, and he's done his level 1. And I am encouraging and spurring on the other guys that I'm working with to pursue that, not just for wage increase, but for, to acquire new skills for their I honestly had a lot of fun doing my apprenticeship, even just for that experience of not just learning, but being in a different social environment, being somewhere else and working hard and seeing the fruits of your labor, bringing that back. And so one of the people that works for us, he really wants to do his apprenticeship. However, he has a learning disability. And so we have two. We have one that has a self-identified, and the other one that actually has a diagnosed learning disability. However, because he came from somewhere else, he still needs to sign his Northwest Territories health card. And if he can't, because he hasn't signed that, he's not able to access his doctor notes and everything, because otherwise he'd be able to use that to get some kind of leniency, or I don't think it's leniency, accommodation. That's the word, accommodation, doing the trades exam. So, but it's very difficult for there's a huge barrier for him, even when it comes to just quickly trying to read something. With roofing, it's not as an essential skill, because he is able to apply himself in the way that we need roofers. He has the skills. His skills are on par with his employment. And so we have identified for him that he needs to sign his healthcare card. And I'm just going to be downloading a application for that and just going through it with him at the job site so he can actually get this done. Our other employee had a self-identified literacy and disability. I went back to EC&E and said, look, this person has difficulty with reading and I think it was just reading, actually. What does he need to do the trades exam? Because he has the skills to do it. He has the skills to completely coast through this roofing program. And the answer that they gave back is it needs to be diagnosed. Well, when you get how, like, as easy as that might sound, our staff is paid hourly. Lots of staff is paid hourly. So if you miss out on work because you need to go to a doctor and get an assessment, there is no, it's not a strong incentive for them because they lose wages. And if you don't have the best financial education, it's a volatile mix to decide not to go to work because of a trades, you need to go to the doctor to get diagnosed for a learning disability to be able to then do a trades exam. It's very, that's official, that this is the way for you to do it. You have to get that piece of paper. I think it's a big barrier, especially considering that 39% of the NWT has not graduated. But that doesn't stop us from advocating on behalf of our employees. Okay, next slide, please. So the further education, it encourages also, it's, you can see it in different ways. We encourage our staff also to become supervisors. We have to also be WSCC compliant, and being compliant, the literacy barrier can be very costly and time consuming for the employer. For the supervisor training or any kind of safety training, at least the minimum is 1 day. And not only that, you have no guarantee that this person will either pass or that the relationship between the employer and the employee will is going to flourish, for them to stay, for the employer to actually invest upfront into costs of safety training because they have to be compliant, and hourly wages. So that is already 8 hours that you're paying to someone that you have no idea will be successful in what they're good, or there's even a click with the employer, So, and we've had times where we've paid for safety training and people have failed. And what does that mean? If people have failed and there's a WSCC compliance component to it, we can't employ them anymore. But that doesn't mean they don't have those skills to actually be safe. And usually most of these tests are written tests. Well, I think I've mentioned before about the literacy barrier. So, and also for any small business that is a very high threshold to fulfill for any small business. Besides the fact that you have to go, you're at the mercy of your competition's availability to do lots of these trainings. So, and I can't imagine how businesses in small communities can be this, how they navigate this. And I think this is also a barrier to local employment when there's a project in Fort Res, Fort Providence, anywhere, that is also can be seen as a barrier, because everyone needs to be there needs to be a basis of safety compliance. For example, for roofing, especially for roofing, it's fall protection. People can be safe on the roof. If the labor force in that community doesn't have that, you can't hire them because of a liability issue, because of a regulation that someone in office in the WSCC made. And, to protect those employees, there should be different ways around this. And there should be more support for the employer to be able to facilitate this. Maybe if someone is looking for this kind of employment, that the WSCC provides this training, or that there is a subsidization of those wages while they do that training. One of the other, for example, SEDETNO, and I'm sorry, I don't know what that abbreviation exactly stands for, but it's a Francophone organization that is a career center. And and it provides vouchers, or it did at least in the past provide vouchers for safety. Thank you. For safety clothing. Yes, I think it was just for safety clothing, like for safety boots and maybe hard hat. I don't know exactly. But I know that some of the guys that came to work for us had new boots, and they were telling all the other people that Sudetno was providing vouchers for these. Maybe there should be some kind of that's a grant, that's a mini grant, that's a subsidization. There should be training in this form. The WSCC could provide a program for the unemployed in fall protection, maybe first aid, WMIS, etc. Like there's definitely a basis in the industry for safety. You can always advance and build on top of that, but that's not. I don't think if there are more requirements, the employer should be able to provide for that. However, with the unemployed, if you provide these safety certificates, employers will jump on someone that has these valid certificates. These certificates are so valuable, and of course they need to be up to date, but that is you could hire someone on the spot with those certificates. And that makes someone that was unemployed very attractive to employers. So if the WSCC, with their requirements, would actually, instead of pushing these requirements only onto employers and trying to make them compliant, if they actually provide an avenue for employees to become compliant and desirable for employers, the community would benefit, because people are acquiring new skills, which, of course, not just increases confidence, but in the ability of them to become employed, but it dramatically increases their employability, which is, I think, very important. I just want to go back to, I believe, a couple of weeks ago, Robert Warburton was doing a presentation over here, and he mentioned that modular homes are a lot cheaper, and those can get people housed very quickly in communities. But one of the reasons I believe that we don't go through that avenue is because of local employment. My question to you is, how many of those projects that actually have built houses have employed people locally, and for how long? I don't think that's where for houses to be costing millions of dollars or in the hundreds of thousands, and then the benefit is, and the rationale behind that is because we want to increase local employment, we can't take that away. Which local employment are you actually talking about? I think it's very important for people to get housed first, and then they can think about their employment, but let's go on to the next slide. Okay. So one of the things that we've also started doing is asking our employees about what do they want to do in this next year? What is it that they want to achieve? Is it increase in wages? Well, then you'll need to, this is a skill set you'll need to get that increase in wages. This is what you need to work on, because if it's very difficult for us to keep increasing wages when no new skill set has been acquired, or an apprenticeship, the educational part of that has not been done. So, okay, work on these skills if you want to increase your wages. If you want to go to the apprenticeship, you need to register for your trades exam. What does that mean? What is the barriers for you to register to your trades exam? I believe in the past, in the earlier part of the presentation, I talked about the literacy. And if it's not the literacy, then it might also be like a learning disability. Let's tackle that. How can we get your healthcare card? Let's find out if EC&E has a workaround. EC&E has a workaround for someone that self-identifies for with their learning disability. One of our employees has the goal of building a cabin. So on our way to one of our projects, to Betchico, he scouted out an area, and we'll be helping him with, he knows how to do the application himself, but he's able to use our tools. If there's any materials that he wants to use, we can assist him in that kind of way and help them advance their life, to give them perspective, and that's that's the growth that we encourage. Next slide, please. So one of the things that I mentioned that we rolled into accidentally is the lead by example. One of the things that I'm doing is my apprenticeship. So hopefully that will encourage others to also do their apprenticeship, besides the skills that I'm acquiring as an owner of a roofing business. The hands-on, you need to be able to know what you're doing. And however, we've noticed that sometimes someone will ask us for their pay stubs. And, that's when we start asking questions like, well, definitely, we give them their pay stubs, of course. And we find out that maybe they're looking at a car. One of the first things that we tell them is don't do it. Don't do it. None of our cars are on payments. And we tell them we live with, with minimal costs so that we are able to afford other things. We don't try to add costs into our life. And having a car payment is something that adds tremendous amount of costs in your life. And so I have seen, and when I was working in public housing and from the employees that we've had, it is not unheard of to have a $750 car loan plus insurance. So there is nothing rational about having a car loan that expensive on a $25 per hour wage. There's I don't know what the process is for these loans. However, if there was a financial education, if there was a whether that starts off in school or through EC&E, those kind of this predatory loaning will have less victims. So we try to encourage them. We have one employee that is supporting a family down south, and last week was payday. It was around $1,800, and all the money was gone. It was gone. He had it, and it was gone. It was spent, and there's another week and a half to go. But he knows that the money that he doesn't have, he can't spend. So we provide our employees with a bonus, and that bonus he told us to hold on to until the end of the year. So he knows that that's the way for him to save money, and that's how we are helping him save that money, because he wants to use it for a different goal. He wants to, I believe one of his aims is home ownership, and he wants to improve his credit score. So if he doesn't have that money for himself or around his family, it will not get spent. Last year, we had an employee that was earning a livable wage, and however, the day after payday, it was all gone. There was nothing left. There was literally nothing left. It was all spent, and they had addiction issues. And we noticed this, so that means he also missed more work. One of the ideas that we came up with, and we told him, is, okay, I will pay you everything. I will pay you your wages, but I'll keep $200. $200 is for me to save for you, so that next week I can give you $20 every day, and you'll actually have, food for groceries, or money for groceries, or money for food, And so he was, So he signed on to that. He agreed. He consented, and payday was Friday. Saturday, I I was at a park with my kids, and he saw me, and it was early in the morning. I could tell he hadn't slept. I could tell that he was still hungover, and he came to me and he said, "Where's my money?" And I said, "I thought we had the agreement that I would save it for you and give it to you next week." And he got very angry at me and said, "No, I want my money now." So I went home and got him his money, and it was gone. And this cycle kept perpetuating. Even though he had a good income and he was living in housing, he did not acquire any skills to see how else to spend that money besides having that layer of addiction on there. So it's very difficult to improve someone's situation, even though the financial aspect has improved, if they don't acquire the new skills. So next slide, please. I'm almost done. Okay, so I think I mentioned this in the previous presentation, which is that maybe social housing needs to have a different strategy, which is to include financial education. And I don't believe that's already done in schools. And I'm not talking about the theoretical economics of how the world works. I'm talking about your basic bread and butter budgeting, considering the audience that we have, the people that live here, their social situation. That's what we need. And people with good jobs still get evicted from their homes. People with high-paying jobs still get evicted from their homes. This is, this is not unheard of. This is, you can go through all the rental office decisions and see this. And it's a shame. It's a shame that this is what's happening. I mentioned the predatory debt, over here. I believe if you look at one of the websites for getting a car loan, they say spend, we don't suggest spending more than 15% of your gross income. Well, I don't think that's a good idea, even at that rate. And support employers by keeping their employees employable. And that is entry-level barriers, which is certificates, which is, there needs to be workarounds, literacy, there needs to be workarounds, people that self-identify with their own disabilities, just get people educated. If someone self-identifies with a learning disability and you have to accommodate that, does it matter that they get a note from the doctor? This person will then be able to continue to move on, instead of being stuck in a certain level where they can't get out of. And, and all these things are what increase costs for either small businesses, maybe in communities, and it definitely increases costs for us. It's so, there's the training and the education, and expecting the employers to carry such high costs from day one with no perspective for either party, whether this will be a successful relationship, is unreasonable. So, public housing needs to have an educational program with regards to how people can go about their financial situation. And I'm almost running out of time, so I think that will be the end of this presentation.
Thank you very much. Ms. Berchan, we really appreciate you coming today and presenting to committee. It's wonderful to see you, and it's always wonderful to hear from you. I'd like to turn this over to committee right away for any questions that committee members may have. And I'll start right away with MLA Knockleby.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First off, I want to say it's great to see a private business, and I'm never sure which way to look in this, where you can see me as the presenter, but it's really nice to see a private sector business getting involved in something like this. When I saw the the plan for a presentation from Summit Roofing. I was getting all excited as an engineer that, we were going to get this technical briefing on what are the best types of roofing systems in the north, and I'm pleasantly surprised to have instead gotten the perspective of a former housing employee, which at times is really hard to get sort of that candid take, because people are still employed, and everybody wants to, protect people and be nice. So I do appreciate that you've come and been pretty frank with us about your perspective. Again, I'm not sure if you could see us in the room, but I literally sat here for the last 50 minutes nodding my head along with everything that you've said. For me, I have a lot of background in safety, project management, the training, like all of what you're talking about is the world I've lived in. I've taken the supervisor training, all of that. And I have to say, when I first moved north about 14 years ago, I took first aid training as part of my job. And it was the first time, I think, ever in my life that I realized that the level of literacy in Canada is not what I thought, because my parents are both teachers. So I was raised in a home where there was a lot of reading, and I read at a young age. So to me, when I realized people were having to be accommodated for first aid exams and do oral tests, like that was really eye-opening. And I've only had more of an education since then. So I think your point around the barriers from the safety training perspective and making them free of charge. I do know at one point the NSA, the Northern Safety Association, was sort of making one-off exceptions where they would provide some training if people were unemployed to help them become more employable, but I'm not sure if that was just a thing they were doing, or if it was an actual sort of policy, or anything that was actually supplemented or paid for by the government. So I'm fully in support of that. That's a big takeaway I'm going to take away from today's presentation. The predatory debt, the education around finances, I could have used that growing up as well. I think I'm only lucky at this point because it's just me, so I have disposable income, but budgeting, and with COVID and finances and the economy going the way it is, we're only going to see more and more of this, and the predatory debt with the quick loans too, as well, which I think people end up in that scenario too, where they're paying these exorbitant rates, carrying credit card debt, which was something I was taught very early on. Do not carry credit card debt, getting a line of credit versus. So anyway, I don't really have a lot of questions. I'm hoping, like Robert Warburton, I can actually pick your brain one-on-one at some time offline, and just continue this conversation. But I think there's a lot of really good takeaways here that us as a committee could ask for fairly quickly to see start moving. So thank you for your presentation.
Thank you very much, Emily Knockleby. Ms. Bertrand, do you have anything you'd like to add to that?
No. And like I said, I think if the WSCC is going to start if it legislates these things as requirements, it needs to provide possibilities. Why doesn't it provide? The unemployed, if you're able to provide them with this training, then they become so much more employable. And I think lots of small communities would especially benefit from this if the idea behind having non-modular homes, easy to set up homes, is because you want to increase local employment. Well, then that's one of the ways that you do that. So I think there needs to be a more facilitation for the unemployed to be more employable.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bertrand. Emily O'Reilly.
Thanks very much. I really appreciated the presentation. I don't think I've got any specific questions for you. You've given me lots to think about. Look, unfortunately, we just had our roof done last fall, or I'd be coming to you guys. But no, more seriously, it's really wonderful to hear from a socially responsible small business. So hats off to you guys. I've had some association with Alternatives North over the years, and the living wage work that they did, I think, was really great. And you can get recognition as a living wage employer. So I'll try to put you in touch with the folks at Alternatives North, because you can get I think you can get a sticker, some recognition and stuff for being a living wage employer, and you deserve that. So, but no, I think you've given us some really helpful, concrete suggestions. The rent scale stuff was very enlightening. Predatory debt, financial education, the WSCC training outside of employment. Those are all great ideas, and I just want to thank you and compliment you for your hands-on experience and some really concrete suggestions for us. So thanks very much.
Thank you.
Emily O'Reilly. Ms. Bertrand, did you want to add anything to that?
I don't think so. I was thinking about the financial education can be approached from lots of different from organizations, you know, like the literacy, the outreach literacy program, the YWCA. You know, there can be like they can all come together and provide this program if you don't want to make it a requirement, for example, for social housing or when people are in social housing. You know, like I know that sometimes when they offer programs, people have young kids and aren't able to get to certain places, or they need maybe a taxi voucher to actually get somewhere. You know, like being able to, we need to understand I just to go back to MLA Knockleby's comment, we need to understand, and the candid, you need to be candid, you need to be honest with yourself to know what you're dealing with. If you can't measure it, then you don't know it. So we need to know who our audience is with regards to these programs. And if we want to make them succeed, we have to make them tailored to the people that we want to succeed. And bringing, you know, like, and you know, like the metrics need to change for that, because otherwise we'll always fail. Like I said, in the 4 years that I've worked for social housing, there was one person that went out from social housing into home ownership that I know of, and they already owned a home before. So, you know, this is, you know, like, why isn't it working? Well, maybe we need to look at who we're dealing with.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bertrand. Emily O'Reilly, do you have a follow-up?
Sorry, just one other comment. The NWT Literacy Council, I don't know if you know those folks, but they do some great work on literacy. I don't know how much outreach they can do on this stuff, but I know at one time they were doing some work with the diamond mines in terms of working with their employees. So you may just want to touch base with them at some point to see if they're able to help you in any way or what kind of resources they may have available. And they do great work as well, so thanks.
Thank you very much, Emily O'Reilly. Emily Bonnet Rouge.
Merci, Madam Chair, and merci, Aya, I think from
Yes.
Summit Roofing, for your presentation and your insight into in-depth looked at housing through your eyes while employed with YKDFN. There were some good comments. I like that you were talking about the challenges we have with fall arrest training. It doesn't come around too often. Like I'm in Fort Providence. We don't get roof jobs too often, but then when they do, they're all of a sudden they're listed, and we got outside companies coming into our community, where we have people within our community that are capable of doing a simple roof job. But the requirements for fall arrest protection and training and all this, I know it's a hassle, because as a project officer that worked out of here, where we always had to do our training every 3 years, even though nothing had changed. And everybody's comments were that, well, it's a money-making business or industry, all the training. But I wish there was a way too, like I'm hoping for a way, as you expressed, to help employ people, not only in small communities, all over, in every region. That there was a way that they could do something on site, you know, the employer, somebody that's qualified, and then have some checklist to complete and have the employer and employee sign moving forward. I wish there was stuff like that set in place. Regarding financial responsibility. I know I've attended Aurora College myself too, and I believe they always incorporate financial budgeting into their training programs. Your roofing, I don't know where they get the training from, but perhaps they don't offer that. I know with the roofing industry, as a project officer in here, I was looking into it to hopefully get certified, but it was a lengthy process, 3-4 years. And, it's kind of the training that we wanted as a government employee, to get extra training, so we had something for backup in case we ever left our work anyways. But stuff like that was never ever offered where we worked before. I'm just wondering about, with your company and everything, like whether you've ever registered for core certification. I didn't hear anything about that. Merci.
Thank you, Emily. Bonnet Rouge, Ms. Berchan.
So we have our own safety program, and we have our policies and procedures. However, to become core certified is from when I did my research, there's a high cost attached to that as well. So I believe there's another program that is like for smaller core certifications. I'm not sure about that exactly. And so one of the things that has prevented us from being core certified, although we are WSCC compliant and we have all our other safety procedures in place, is the high cost attached to that and the administration cost attached to that. So yes, so that's my answer to that. And with regards to, I believe you mentioned something in the beginning, of course, to training. You mentioned that Aurora College provides these courses. That's not the level that is needed. People that are able to go, that are accepted into Aurora College, they might need financial, education, additional financial education, and they're able to get that at Aurora College. However, if you look at the demographic of the people that are either in social housing or that are working in trades, they're not going to Aurora College. So, or they're not employed with the government. So the government might have a program for this, or it had, or I'm not sure exactly where you mentioned that there was a possibility, which is absolutely great and amazing. But that's not the level of education that is, that's not the audience. It needs to be looked at from a more practical perspective instead of a books and a lecturing perspective. It almost needs to be done one-on-one, I think.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bertrand. Emily Bonnet Rouge, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, merci, Madam Chair, and merci for that. The financial budgeting, I didn't mean it in sense of a total course outlook. I think when I've done it before as a housing maintainer back in the day, it was just a little paper that was given to you, and it says, it just explains how to budget. So something simple like that's what I was getting at. That I should have explained it a little more in detail, but I had another one here, and your comment about some of your employees failing supervisor safety courses. It's kind of alarming also. Because I thought they were helping a lot, but maybe it's just memory perception. I'm not sure, but it goes a long ways, because I address education quite a bit in the Legislative Assembly. since I first got in there, that our people just don't have the education levels. In the whole of the Northwest Territories, I don't know where we're going to get, or how many people will actually attend a technical university. But as things progress, I guess things will work out. But I was hoping with the education, like they wanted to improve the education outcomes across and then into the small communities especially. But, we're trying to have them incorporate technical life skills training in the high school components. And a lot of it could be, there's carpentry, there's all kinds of different things. When I went to Sir John Franklin way back in the day, I took, there's automotive mechanics, there was photography. I took photography at that time. They offered a lot of different things there. And we need a lot of skills with carpentry in our community. So, I'm at the, at the stage where I believe we should have at least some examinations at the grade 8, grade 9 level so that we can prepare them to take a trades entrance exam should they ever leave school in the 9 to 12 area or even after. That's training them to prepare for their future. That's more of a comment than anything. And I appreciate your presentation and your talks, Mussy.
Thank you. Sorry, just one more thing. You were talking about the skills, going into communities. One of the things that we proposed to the NWG Housing Corporation is to go into communities at cost and at the same time of training and educating on how to assess your roof, to actually assess roofs of people that live there so that you have, two birds with one stone, and one of the things that we heard back was, we don't, it was a generic, I felt like it was a generic reply of like, we'll see what we do with this, however, from my understanding from you, it's something that the communities would like to see. And I'm sure there would be other businesses that would be interested in educating at the same time doing work, and then, people, so that people have their own, can acquire those skills for them to take care of their own homes. If people can't take care of their own homes, how can you expect them to go into home ownership?
Thank you very much, Ms. Berchan. Members, are there any additional questions at this time? Seeing none, Ms. Berchan, thank you so much for joining us here today. We really appreciate you taking the time to join us and to pass along your knowledge and experience both within social housing and as a homeowner employer and business owner in the Northwest Territories. We really appreciate it, and it's always nice to get to see you. So thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And I'm sure I will see you soon.
Sounds good.
Okay, bye now.
Bye-bye.